Hello and welcome to episode 49 of Pushing Cardboard, recorded in October 2025. I've finally got a temporary studio set up in our temporary home, but it meant I missed doing a podcast in September. That's the first time I've missed a month since I began, and I can't say I like it. Still, next month will mark 4 years of doing the show, and it will be episode 50, so I'm still averaging a little more than one per month. 50, whew. That's a bit of a milestone. I'll have to come up with some way to celebrate. In the meantime, onwards. Since it's been extra long, there's a fair bit of news, though I suppose some of it isn't exactly hot off the presses by now, and a fair number of new releases to mention. And then you'll hear my conversation with designer and developer Terry Simo. Terry is retired from the USAF, so it's no surprise that design work focuses on various air wars. And finally, while all my games are in storage, I'm happy to say my pre-ordered copy of Brian Train's Brief Border Wars 2 has arrived, so I'll give you an overview of that system and the battles it includes. And of course, new games in my collection and chit-chat from the history board gaming world. News. Let's start with something that's a real surprise to me. GMT's Paths of Glory is now online on Rally the Troops. Rules fully enforced. It's a fairly heavy lift, rules-wise, and there's a ton of exceptions to the rules, so hats off to whoever coded it. It makes me think almost anything is possible on Rally the Troops, depending on the permissions of the publishers. I've heard from publishers that feel like Rally the Troop gives their game extra profile and it's good for sales. I've also heard from publishers that won't even post PDFs of their rules for fear of people playing for free on Vassal. Personally, I don't think you lose any sales. Just because they play for free doesn't mean they'll buy the game if they couldn't play it on Vassal. GMT's September newsletter gave an update on their new international shipping for P500 orders. Sounds like everything's working well. I still haven't received anything yet, but I'll report when I do. They're offering a free PDF of optional rules for Wolfpack. New rules and new scenarios for free? That's a pretty sweet offer. They also showed the back cover for the Commands and Colors Napoleon's Grand Battles box. The BGG page for this was created 5 years ago, and the comments in the BGG forum sound like players thought they were going to get way back then. Didn't they know there's a mysterious reason that Commands and Colors games take super long to get through the GMT pipeline, despite being big sellers? Anyway, looks like this expansion may finally be coming. They have a new solitaire game from Herman Luttman, A Hell So Terrible, Verdun 1916. Seems to have the folks at GMT buzzing. The early promotional copy promises innovation, which is totally to be expected with Herman Luttman. It feels like he has a fresh game with 5 different publishers at the same time. Man, this guy's on fire. And at long last, a reprint of Typhoon. Ardwolf Can Die Happy. Folks have been waiting for this a long time. Originally published in 1995, it's been out of print for ages. And then, thanks for not getting this out in September, there was also a GMT October update. I'll just hit a few highlights. Tank Duel has a new free campaign system. Mike Berticelli's very generous. Last update was free content for his Wolfpack game. This time it's his Tank Duel. Thanks, Mike. The only other things I'll note are a couple of new things on P500. Ancient Civilizations of East Asia. This is the newest entry into the Ancient Civilizations series and is the best yet, according to Gene at GMT anyway. And also Punicus, the Second Punic War. This is a block game based a bit on the Hellenist system, which I haven't played, so I can't comment on. And then on Saturday News, there was a removal this time, Napoleon in Egypt by Pascal Tupi. This is too bad. There's not many games on Napoleon in Egypt out there. If you're dying for some Napoleon in Egypt action while you wait for this one to find a new home, I recommend the game from Forum Square called Bonaparte's Eastern Empire. Check that one out. Anyway, that's it for GMT. This has been talked about for a while, but it's finally happening. New England Simulations redo of John Butterfield's Hell's Highway, now called On Hell's Highway. It's not just a cleanup of the counters and map, but new combat system, new orders of battle, refined rules. I first heard about this when I interviewed John a couple years ago, but it's much closer to being real as I saw pictures of him play testing at GMT West. I can't wait. When I talked to him a couple years ago in that interview, he mentioned that he was redoing this and he was changing some of the things because, frankly, all the things he's learned in another 30 or 30 or 35 years of being in the hobby. So expect a real redo. Since I wrote the entry about Paths of Glory being on Rally the Troops, they have now also added Verdun 1916 Steel Inferno. This is a fantastic game. If you don't believe me, ask Volko Runke. I'm pretty sure it's one of his favorites. I look forward to playing this online as well. Sengoku Jidai, a second game in the General Orders series from David Thompson and Trevor Benjamin, is now out from Osprey. This time set in feudal Japan. I've heard it adds a few new twists to an already excellent system. Lock and Load has announced a new game, Close Quarter Battles Waterloo. The promotional materials don't explicitly state the scale, but it certainly appears to be a tactical game with the units maybe being companies. Hard to say. It definitely looks different than any Napoleonic game I've played. And then finally, tangentially related, many of you will have viewed videos by Marco Arnaudo, or known online as Marco the Omnigamer. After 15 years of reviewing games, he's retiring his camera and moving on to other things. He was definitely a force in the video review space and many people's go-to name for reviews. I wish him well. This episode is sponsored by Cube for me. They have the best trays, the most versatile trays. Check out my website or my newsletter for the link. Use it to order their trays. They'll know I sent you. And not only that, you'll get 5% off your order. Really, you can't afford not to try them. What's on the table? Well, nothing really, as I still haven't come up with a place to play much in my temporary home. I'm barely keeping a couple Vassal PBMs going. I hope to get something on the table soon, as I can't face 2 more months of no games to mess around with. And from what my contractor tells me, with the addition of the repairs to the basement as well, it might be more than 2 months, so I'm getting desperate. New games to the collection. Here's a few things that I'd like to get on that table. 1811 Albuera, 2nd edition. This is from Tactical Workshop, a company I've not encountered before. It says it uses a card-driven initiative activation system, so perhaps a twist on chit pull using cards? I'm not sure. It's a very heavy box, mounted map. It says it's 2nd edition, so hopefully any bugs in the system have been squashed. And then I got a few games, used games from Noble Knight while they had their free international shipping promotion on. Set Europe Ablaze, The Resistance War, 1939 to 1945. This is an ATO magazine game by John Prados. It's a World War II game about the resistance in France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. And since it's John Prados, I thought it was worth a look. Skirmisher Magazine number 4. I miss getting this from MMP. Stonewall in the Valley and Stonewall's Last Battle, the Chancellorsville campaign. These are 2 GCACW games from Avalon Hill. Despite the fact that I'm only just learning the system, I'm so sure that I'm going to like it that I keep buying games in the series, as well as that Skirmisher Magazine. Tito and his Partisan Army, Yugoslavia 1941 to 45. This is an old S&T game that I've always wanted. I know some folks were turned off by the map, but I've always heard it's a good game, so here we go. And then finally, Tokyo Express, the Guadalcanal Naval Campaign, 1942 from Victory Games. This is supposed to be on the more complex side, but a terrific game once you get the handle on it, apparently. So, 2-player or solo. The solo one is said to be more complex than the opposed play, so hopefully I can find someone to play this with. And then finally, I also bought a few used games direct from an estate sale. Anzio, The Struggle for Italy. This is the old Avalon Hill game known as the first step reduction game. Well, this is disputed. There's another game that came out the same year, also had step reduction. But anyway, most people call it Anzio. I've always wanted to try it, and the price was right. In this version of step loss, you don't flip the counter to a weaker side. You replace it with a lesser value counter. So more fiddly, but step reduction had to start somewhere. Chancellorsville, 1863. This is Morris Suckling's game from Worthington. There's a Gettysburg game that came out after it that I quite liked that used its system, so I wanted to track this one down. I'd also played Suckling's Freeman's Farm, which I think originated the bones of the system, but I'm not sure. I'll know once I get this on the table. Fields of Despair, France, 1914 to 18. I know almost nothing about this game other than it has a great reputation, and I've been on the lookout for it for a while, so I finally grabbed it. Lee Takes Command. This is a Clash of Arms title from 1993. Another one where I'd heard good things, never found a copy. Manassas. This is the Rick Britton game from Iron Crown Enterprises. I know it's possibly getting remade by either Compass or Decision, but the guys on the We Intend to Move on Your Works podcast love it so much I jumped on it when I saw a copy at a decent price. Western Front Tank Leader, another oldie I missed but heard good things about from West End Games. If I like it, I'll maybe track down the Eastern Front Tank Leader one. And then, a couple of new ones I forgot about. Wakao 1813, this is the latest Ve Victus magazine game. And of course, Brief Borders Wars 2, which I already mentioned. And also from Compass, Desert Blitzkrieg, Rommel's North African campaign. This was a Compass pre-order. This is a point-to-point game. The map caught my eye, as some of those points are deeper into the desert than many North Africa games go. I don't know, maybe maybe it really features the long-range desert group or something like that. Anyway, that's it. Given all my games are in storage, it was great to get a couple of boxes of used oldies and a couple of pre-orders. If I can make the table space now, I'll have a few to choose from to play. This episode is also sponsored by Noble Knight Games. If there's an out-of-print game you're looking for, they're your best chance. If you're looking for used games to avoid the new and shrink price, they've got thousands. And if you're looking to sell games, they're your best choice as well. Check out the link in the show notes or the newsletter or on the website and use it to get to their store. That way they'll know I sent you. I'll get a little kickback. I'll spend it on games. I'll tell you about them. And then you'll head back to buy more games. It's a virtuous circle. Brief Border Wars 2. As the name makes clear, this is the second volume in Brian Train's Brief Border Wars series. I enjoyed the first volume, which covered fairly recent conflicts ranging from 1969 to 2006. In this new volume, he turns back the clock and tackles 4 smaller engagements from the first half of the last century. These are lesser-known affairs, but each of them interesting situations. There's Bulgaria versus Greek and Serbia in the Second Balkan War, 1913. There's Poles versus Czechs in Teschen, 1919. There's the Battle of Khalkhin Gol with the Soviets versus the Japanese in 1939. And finally, Italians versus Greeks in 1940. These games are very much inspired by the old SPI quads. 4 different conflicts, 4 different maps, but one set of rules with a card of special rules for each of the 4 battles. The paper maps are all 22 by 17, very clear, easy to read. They are area maps with a symbol in each area to indicate any defensive terrain modifiers as well as victory point value. The counters are 5/8 inch, and there's just a handful of units for each side in each engagement, as well as a few markers, though the game is not marker heavy in the least. The unit scale varies from scenario to scenario, but the counters are straightforward. You have NATO symbols to indicate what type of unit, you have the unit ID, and then you have a single combat strength number. That's it. On the flip side of the counter, there's the same info but with a stripe through it to show the unit is disrupted. Some units have a slightly lower combat factor on their disrupted side. And then finally, there's a deck of cards. This is definitely a card-driven game, but not in the way you might be thinking. This isn't Paths of Glory or even Washington War. The cards are very simple. Half the cards are gray and half are white. Each card has 2 values, a movement value and a combat value. When you play the card, you can use one value or the other. As well, there's 2 random event cards. If you draw one of these, you roll on the random events table and resolve it immediately. And then finally, there's also 6 special action cards for each side, 6 white and 6 gray. So, how does it all work? In each scenario, one player is the designated player, which roughly means the attacker, I think. The victory conditions in each game are simple. The attacker will need to amass a certain number of victory points by the end of the game. In this package, each game is 7 turns long. As mentioned earlier, certain areas on the map will have a victory point value, so very straightforward victory conditions. Amass a certain number of victory point locations by 7 turns. Okay, remember how I said half the cards are white and half are gray? In each game, one side uses the gray cards and the other one the white cards. But what's interesting is they still form one multicolored deck. To start the game, each player puts out their pieces, their assigned setups, and then they take their 6 special action cards and you're ready to go. And you start a turn. Either player deals the top 6 cards off the deck face down. So you can't see what the values are, but you can see if each card is gray or white. The gray player takes the gray cards, the white player the white cards. Now, obviously, it's not going to be a nice 3 cards each for most turns. One side will have more cards than the other. The side that has the most cards plays first. When it's your turn to play, you play one of the cards from your hand or one of your special action cards. I'll get to those later. Playing a normal card, you'll be playing it for either its combat or movement value. These values run from 1 to 8, and in general, a card with a high movement value will have a low combat value and vice versa. If you play a card for movement, the value of the card tells you how many units you can move. Each ground unit can move one area. Air units can fly from the rear area to any area on the board. Other than rivers, terrain doesn't restrict movement much. The only real restriction is that if a unit is in an area with a good order enemy unit, it may not leave that area, and a unit can only move once per card. That is, if you play a movement 3 card, you can move 3 units, 1 area each. You can't move 1 unit 3 areas. Likewise, using a combat cards tells you how many units you can use to attack with, but you can only attack units that are in the same area as the attacking units. You can split your points up into more than one attack. For example, if you have an attack 6 card, you can use 2 units to attack in one place and 4 units to attack in another. Also, the attacker decides not only which units to attack with, but also which units will defend. As attacker, you're not required to attack all the units in an area. However, after the attacker declares what is attacking what, the defender can spend one of their special action cards to bring in a couple more defending units, so your attacking plans can be messed with. Combat has a few more wrinkles in it than movement. After the attacker has designated the attacking and defending units, and the defender has decided whether or not to spend a precious card to add in more, then we come to air units, if there are any in the scenario. The attacker can include any air units already in the area, and add in any from their rear area. Then the defender does the same. These air units don't count against the total number of attacking units allowed by the card. There's some simple air versus air combat. Each side adds up their combat strength, gets that many dice, and hits on 5s or 6s. Hit planes will go back to their rear area or maybe even to their damage box. Any remaining air units add 1 die to their side's total combat factors. Then both sides total up their combat strength. The attacker can only use undisrupted units to attack, but can attack disrupted units, which get to use their combat strength in defense. The defender also might get an extra die or 2 for terrain. Both sides roll, again 5s and 6s hits, and losses are taken. Units retreat, they disrupt, or they go to the damaged box. Defending units that were already disrupted are more likely to be damaged than good order units. Another thing of note here, the player inflicting the hits decides which opposing units take them. There's no rule saying that every unit has to take a single hit before any unit takes another. So you can pile all your hits into a single unit if you like. Quite often, after battle, both sides will still have a mix of fresh and disrupted units in the area. But if you do manage to completely push the defender out of an area, this is where your armor units, if you have any, get an extra exploitation move, just a free move to any adjacent area. And that's the heart of the game. You play a card and either move or attack. You can pass, but if both players pass in succession, the turn ends and any unused cards are discarded. After both players are out of cards, other than their pile of special action cards, the turn ends, and there's a couple of things to do before moving on to the next turn. First, all air units are returned to their home area, and then each side can attempt to recover some units. You can roll for every disrupted unit you have, whether on board or in your rear area, and a 5 or a 6 returns them to good order. As well, you can roll for each unit in your damaged box. A 5 or a 6 moves them into your rear area from the damaged box. If you're desperate, you can spend a special action card to restore all the disrupted units in any one area, or to move all the units from the damaged box to the rear area. And that's it. You go through 7 turns of 6 cards each, plus any special cards, and after the 7th turn, you count up the VPs to see if it's a win, loss, or a draw for the designated player. Of course, if it was as simple as that, these games would feel fairly similar, but as you'd expect, each engagement has a few rules to make itself unique, and each one also has its own random events table. Those scenario-specific rules usually include an extra action or 2 that can be done with the special action cards. This is where Brian Train packs in a lot of the flavor. For example, in the Japanese-Soviet game, the Japanese can use their special action card to make a night attack, which is extra deadly at the cost of making the attacking units disrupted, whereas the Soviet player can use their special action card to do a bombardment into an adjacent hex, or to raid the Japanese rear area. And each scenario card also has a handful of optional rules that can be used or not. Some of them might be a good way to balance the scenario if you feel one side is favored over the other. I really like this system, and I'm looking forward to playing through the other 3 games in the box. These can be played in 60 to 90 minutes, maybe 120 if you get really thinky. I recommend this to all players except for that sliver that hates dealing with the luck of the cards. The players who dislike Combat Commander because they dislike not having the fire card when they have a really great shot to take will probably dislike this for the same reason. Brian has included in his designer notes a way to play that eliminates the random card draws, but it sounds like it takes most of the fun out. So, there you have it. Brief Border Wars 2 by Brian Train from Compass Games. Okay, time for the interview. If you're a fan of air war games, there's a good chance you've come across Terry Simo. With GMT, he designed Elusive Victory on the air war part of the Arab-Israeli War, and Bloody April, an almost operational game on the World War I air war. He's got a couple more titles in the oven at the moment, and he's also become a developer for Legion Games. He's a retired veteran of the U.S. Air Force, so he knows a thing or two about air combat. Here's our conversation. Hello, welcome to Pushing Cardboard. Today I'm delighted to have with me as my guest Terry. Well, I don't know if it's Simo or Simo. How do you pronounce your last name, Terry?
You got it right the first time.
Simo. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Terry, great to have you from. I guess you're in beautiful, warm Las Vegas. We just had our first snowfall here, so I'm a little envious.
Yeah, it's starting to get a little chilly here too. It's like down in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, your idea of chili and mine are very different. Well, I've got you on today because I want to talk to you about some of the air games you've been working on. You're both a designer and a developer, but since I haven't spoken with you before, I'd like to talk first just a bit about your history as a gamer and how long you've been in the hobby and what brings you to designing, things like that. So, yeah, when did you first start playing?
Probably in the 1970s when I was in high school. So, always interested in military. I had an uncle who was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, so kind of looked up to him and his accomplishments, and that kind of led me into military history and aviation in general. So, enjoyed war games. Some of the ones that I first started off with are Tobruk and the submarine game. I still have them in original boxes, held together with duct tape in a few cases for the Tobruk game. But that and playing Risk with my friends in high school, kind of got me into board games. So that's where I started.
Tobruk was my first as well, but it's you started with a tank game and a submarine game, but your uncle was into aviation, and we'll get to it a little bit later. You ended up in the Air Force. It's interesting that your first games weren't air games. When did you first start playing air games?
The first one, when I was in the Air Force, I went into the Air Force BX, and there was a game called Air Superiority that was on the shelf there, and I had never seen any board games in there. And this one had a prominent display, and I grabbed a copy. J.D. Webster was the designer. He's a former Navy pilot, and he also flew in the Air Force too, in the Air National Guard. So got involved with him and did a lot of tinkering with the game, and just enjoy the air combat games. So that's kind of where I started with those.
Starting with J.D. Webster is starting it not in the shallow end. His games are fairly, I'm not want to say complex, but he gets down into the nitty gritty about it.
Yeah, he's as he's developed his games, Air Superiority, Airstrike, and then really his big one, which I've played for probably 30 plus years, is Fighting Wings, and I run a big campaign for that. I've done that for the last 4 or 5 years. It's got 30 plus players from around the world that join in on it, so it's a lot of fun.
That's his big series. That's I think the latest box for that was maybe Heroes of the Motherland or
Wings. Yeah,
Wings. Yeah, the big Soviet one.
Yeah, let me see. I think I got the box right here. So, yeah, it's Wings.
Yeah.
Wings of the Motherland.
Yeah, there it is. Beautiful. For some of you listening, you're going to be listening to this on the podcast. You're not going to be able to see what we're talking about from time to time, but there will. I'll if you do want to see the visuals, I'll also post this on the YouTube channel for those who want to see as well as listen. Yeah, he's the big campaign. Do the people play that via Vassal, or do they play it head to head at in their hometowns, or how does that work?
For the campaign game I run, it's run myself and the other game masters that run it, because we have like separate scenarios that are going on at the same time. That I have a referee do one, I referee another one. At one time, I had 3 different referees, so we were doing 3 scenarios where players were in different segments of the war. And we're doing that on Vaso is how we track things, but players, there's different ways of players to do that. They can either, use the maps and set it up on their table at home if they have the space. I like Vassal for the storage capability, and there's other people that use PostScript, which will generate maps for them, and then they can track aircraft with that. So there's a couple of means to do it, but primarily Vassal.
Well, so you first started playing J.D. Webster's games when you're in the Air Force. We spoke a little bit off before coming on the air, but I think people would be interested to know your job in the Air Force. What you, because I found it really interesting.
Yeah, I was Air Battle Manager is the current job title. It's basically a controller for fighter aircraft. So basically the most expensive video game you can play, where you have multi-million-dollar aircraft with humans involved, and it's always fun when nobody's actually shooting at you. So, it's really good. I've got over 2,000 missions that I've done, and also I've flown F-16 and F-15 aircraft. Got about 200 hours in all those different types of aircraft flying missions. So,
wow,
all over the place.
So that makes me think when you're looking at not just designing an air game, but when you're playing somebody else's air game, you're going to have a much more knowledgeable opinion about how they model flight, or how they model any kind of engagement. You must be sort of picky about what kind of air games you play.
Yeah, there is. I mean, it's there's a fine line between complexity and playability, and I like the realism up to the point where complexity doesn't take over. If it becomes more of a math spreadsheet, and it's not as much about the actual flying the plane, especially when it's not a simulator, when you're playing a board game, obviously. Yeah. So it's usually chunks of time that you're now modeling the movement, and if it gets too complicated, then it's not as much fun for me, versus more of the tactics and maybe a little higher level view of what's going on with air combat.
I remember feeling that exact thing, like way back when I was like in the 70s, starting out as well. And the first air game I got was Richthofen's War, which nobody would call it a great model, but it was we had great fun with it. And then Avalon Hill came up with Knights of the Air, which was maybe a more detailed model, but it just wasn't, to my mind, it just wasn't as fun. We just went back to playing Richthofen's War. We didn't enjoy Knights of the Air at all.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things with Fighting Wings, I mean, I've been to a couple conventions where I've played them face to face, and it takes an extremely long amount of time to simulate a small amount of real time in a lot of these air games, which is where something like Vassal, I mean, it might take us a year to play a scenario when we have 30 or 40 players, but the amount of time that you actually spend on a move, I might spend 15 minutes doing my move, but I'm now not waiting for, if I was playing face to face, I would be waiting, maybe 45 minutes before I could do a move again while other people are doing their things. Where
Right.
I think that's one of the things where a vassal game, doing the play by email style allows people, you may take 20 minutes to plot a move. I may do a move in 5 minutes, but in vassal, we post a move, and when you get it, how much time you spend on it is up to you and not the other person's time.
Yeah, I love Vassal for exactly that reason. I also love it for the fact that it connects me with people that I wouldn't otherwise get to play with. Like you and I are playing Death in the Trenches, something completely
Right.
different. But
Right.
I don't. I have a limited number of opponents where I am, so it's nice to be able to just play somebody in the States, play somebody in England, play somebody in Norway, whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely allows for worldwide gaming.
I totally hear what you're saying about the more detailed the game is, it can take 2 hours to model 6 minutes, things like that. I remember when I first played Air Force and Dauntless, the Craig Taylor games of World War II. I felt a bit like that. I felt like, man, it's taken a long time to do just a little bit of simulation.
Right. Yeah, that's where like the games that I've designed, Elusive Victory and Bloody April, take a different viewpoint of, like Fighting Wings is the actual individual aircraft combat. You're moving an individual aircraft, where like Elusive Victory and Bloody April, the two of my designs, you're actually moving flights of aircraft, and you're engaging with flights of aircraft versus single aircraft, because most air combat is you're doing it as a team. You're not running around as a single aircraft doing that. So that's kind of where I did my niche for designing air games, is kind of using that model.
Right. It's like taking it up from squad level to platoon level, or from single man level to squad level. It's just
exactly
one level higher, which totally makes sense in the way you describe it. As even going back to World War One, they started to realize that working in teams was more likely to be save your skin than to be lone wolves.
Right, exactly. And I mean, they didn't have the means to communicate, obviously, without having radios, but they were flying very close to each other, hand signals and whatnot. But yeah, they were flying, two aircraft, four aircraft together, and later in World War One, they started flying a lot larger formations.
Yeah, and by World War II, nobody really flew alone other than maybe reconnaissance, right? It's like
exactly.
The Germans were doing the Schwarm, and the Brits were doing the Vic, until they realized the Schwarm was actually better than the Vic.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on and talk about your designs a little bit. Your first one was Elusive Victory. Now, as I understand it, that's in some ways based on Lee Brimacombe Wood's Downtown.
Yeah, I was like a assistant designer on Downtown. I actually had I was able to get access to what's called the Red Baron reports, which are the classified reports from Vietnam. So I was actually, because they ended up downgrading them right around the time that Lee was working on the game, and I had access to Maxwell Air Force Base to get a hold of those documents. So I was able to provide Lee with a lot of the detail in the of what was going on in the Vietnam War, which made Downtown such a great game. Is he was able to model a lot of the things from that. And for me, I consider myself a amateur historian. So I've got more history books than I have war games. So if I find a book that really tickles my fancy on some kind of conflict, that makes me want to design a game for it, which is Elusive Victory is, the title of the book that I read on the Arab-Israeli wars, and that made me want to design a game based on that book using the Downtown system.
Right. So yeah, I mean the downtown is I think out of print now, and it's one of those games that probably goes for $200 on the aftermarket because like
Right.
that's a lot of people's favorite game on the subject. So uh, it made perfect sense to try and move that system to other conflicts if Lee wasn't going to do it himself, right?
Right. Yeah. And he wasn't interested in doing any more on that because he was moving on to what became his Wing Leader series, which is, again, a fun game system, but a different style of game because it was basically the side scrolling of, using that aspect of depicting air combat.
Yeah, that his wing leader system was totally revolutionary. We're so used to using a top down models because we think of all maneuvers as sort of being on the x-axis, I guess. Like turning, banking away, in and away. And his thought with wing leader really was that it's all about the energy, and so altitude is way more important than side to side because of energy you spend or energy you create, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then, you're basically doing the hit and run. And then, again, it's still modeled a little bit of the turning conflict once the aircraft had merged with each other. So, and Lee's always, that's one thing that I admire about him is he's always looking to push the envelope in a new direction for that. And for me, I'm more of a tinkerer with game systems and looking to take some game systems and then morph them into something that I want to play more than the original games is kind of where I came from.
Well, yeah, he's also one of those guys that's also a hell of a great graphic designer as well. His pieces for even if you didn't like the game, Wing Leader, you want to have the components because they're so beautiful.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I envy the guys that are artistic. That is I'm on the zero artistic. I could do stick figures.
Yeah, we're on the same page there.
Yeah.
So you move that system slightly forward to do air war over the Suez Canal with Elusive Victory, but then you also take the same system and move it backwards for Bloody April, your World War One game. It's
Yeah,
that's the same sort of system.
I would say it's a cousin to the system because
Right.
it's a raid style game, but I totally redid the mechanics in that game because the one of the things with the World War One aircraft is they're all slow. They're not really fast. So I had to differentiate some of their capabilities, and a lot of it was in their ability, time to climb, the weaponry, especially the Germans. One of their big things was having the twin machine guns where, the Brits and the French for a long time just only had a single machine gun, which
Yeah,
is,
single Vickers. Yeah,
huge,
yeah.
yeah, a huge disadvantage in firepower, which is why the German aces were probably more successful because of the aircraft they had and weaponry. But again, it comes down to reading a book. So I read the Bloody April book and by Hart, an excellent book, and it just screamed out to me like, "Hey, you need to design a game based on the commentary of this." And that's one of the things I'm most proud of Bloody April is people that play it come back with a narrative that the game evokes for them on just all the different missions that you're flying, the photo reconnaissance, artillery cooperation, the recon, the line patrols, stuff like that. It just gives you a real authentic, I think, World War One air combat feel. And I found it fascinating researching it because a lot of the concepts that I used in the Air Force in the 90s, I see the beginnings of their development in the 1916, 1917 timeframe.
I think Bloody April is really interesting that way because other World War One games, you're going up as a single plane. You might be doing like, 3 planes versus 3 planes, something like that, and it's all the same missions, but it doesn't. If in your game, Bloody April, the missions feel more filled out because it's not the squadron is actually carrying on the mission. It's not just two guys that are part of a bigger mission, whether it's trench strafing or photo recon or whatever the mission is.
Right. And, in one of my last jobs in the Air Force is I taught operational air combat, where I would teach people how to run a huge air war where you have all these different facets. So it's kind of a reflection of what that game models, because you're doing your escort, you're doing your observation missions, you're doing your recon, and you're tying that all in together for, your objectives for that day, that block of time that you're flying those missions.
Right. I love the I'm a big fan of World War One air games in particular. Something about those early clunky planes. It's the differences in performance from plane to plane feel so stark and exaggerated than compared to modern planes, where it's like, an eighth of a second difference, between modern jets and things like that. But those early planes, it's like, the difference between an Albatross D3 and a DR1, a Fokker DR1, is like they're huge. Part of the fun must be when you're designing these games is researching those differences and seeing where each side tries to leverage their advantage and minimize their disadvantages.
Yeah, and that's definitely a key factor. And I think, I have one here because I'm in a guy from Australia is running a multiplayer double blind game of Bloody April, and like this was one of the things that I came up for the game, was having these aircraft data cards, which I thought was like a neat, like almost like a little collector card type thing that you use it, but it has all the performance information on
nice.
it. So, when you're playing the game, you just take out the cards for each of the aircraft that you're, having in your missions, and, you can see all their performance data and able to utilize it.
Yeah. So those were your two earlier designs. Before we get to what you're working on at the moment, though, there was also, and we talked about this a little bit, you started a design about Guadalcanal as well with the Cactus Air Force, but that it never came to fruition. Is there any chance that game that you'll ever pick that up again, or?
It really depends on one, because I was collaborating with Jerry White on that because I thought that his system, and this was before Skies Over Britain came out. I thought his system would work for the Cactus. Again, I designed my games as 2-player games, so the Cactus game I was looking at based on what the Japanese activities are. Their activities are to fly their missions to Guadalcanal, so there wasn't really a lot of player interaction on the Japanese side. I mean, it's basically you would just have your raids coming in, but the the U.S. side is where the action is for that. So I had some concepts that I was developing for the solo game to do the combat, and it just wasn't elegant or streamlined enough for my liking to pursue it. And at the time I had just transitioned my work situation. I had retired from the Air Force and I'd gone into civilian government work, and I was a supervisor, so I had a lot of people that I was supervising, plus we were doing a lot of major exercises that every time I don't know if you had ever heard of the red flag exercises that the Air Force does. It's a really big thing where they bring in different countries, and they usually last 3 to 4 weeks at a time. So they're pretty intensive, and the amount of prep time that we do to prepare for those takes up a lot of time. So I wasn't doing a lot of game design work. So that Cactus, even though I had met all the pre-orders for GMT, I just wasn't able to bring it to the finish line in a fashion I wanted to. So I had reached out to Jerry about it, and Jerry's, he's, that guy's got an assembly line of different games that he's working on. I don't know how he has the energy to do his day job and do all that at the same time, but he's done a fantastic job with the games that he's designed. So I had reached out to him, and he was interested on a certain level. We got together at GMT West about a year and a half ago, I think, and talked. We spent about half a day going through the concepts of the different things, and it definitely looked workable. But again, he had a lot of projects he was working on. I had projects I was working on. So if I stop what I'm doing now, it would take a pretty good amount of effort to do it without Jerry's collaboration.
So
I might be able to accomplish it on my own, but without his help, I don't know if I would be able to get that specific game to the finish line.
Well, we'll just have to live and hope that either you do it yourself or Jerry comes back into the picture, because I think there's not a lot of stuff out there on Cactus Air Force. I think it might be something people are interested in.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time researching it. So, I mean, I had, pretty good information on where I wanted to go with it. I mean, the game design I had was an area movement style game, but it just wasn't getting to the point where I felt like it was going to be, something. And again, I design games because I want to play them. I'm not designing them. It's, like I said, I read a book. That book fascinates me. I'm like, I'm going to make a game about that because I want to play it, whether it's a commercial success or not, even though I did win 2 of the CSR awards for those other 2 games. That's not my goal going into it. It's designing something that I haven't seen elsewhere, and learning about the subject, the history is one of the things. That's one of the things I really love about board games, is learning about different historical events by playing through the games.
I think most good designers, they talk about the number one thing that interests them in designing is they want to make a game that they want to play. Sometimes it's a game, they make a game on a subject that they go, I'm really interested in this subject, and none of the games on this subject really do it for me, so I'm going to have to make my own game if I'm going to have a game on subject X that I want to play. So I think that's the way we get good games, is designers who are also players.
Yeah, and I definitely play a lot more games than I design. That's for sure. I probably have 15 Vassal games going on right now. So
but you're working on a game right now. Berlin Airlift, is that the right title?
Yeah, Berlin Airlift.
Or is that just the topic?
Yeah, no, it's Berlin Airlift.
Is it a solo game, or is this a 2-player game?
It is a solo player up to 4 players. Yeah, so what you're seeing there is kind of like a end turn for a game, a playtest game we had going on. So you see all the different aircraft, and one of the things is you'll see that the counters, the players actually are having a squadron, but they're actually they basically have a wing amount of aircraft. So the goal of the game is you are going to fly those aircraft from bases in West Germany, and you're trying to get them through the blockade to get them to Berlin to deliver 4 different types of cargo. So you have coal and liquid fuel, which are the black cubes over here, and the number you see there is the goal. So there's 4 seasons in the game. They go summer, fall, winter, and spring of 1949. and your aircraft types may change, and different things will happen with that on the aircraft. But your goal is to deliver and meet your goal. In this case, for this squadron, their goal was to deliver seven of these cubes, which represent cargo load. And then there's food, medicine, and spare parts that you're trying to deliver. And again, the medicine and spare parts are more rare, harder to get. So to deliver those out, and you're basically going to take your aircraft, as you can see here. One of the things that when I took over the design, I added a crew element. So you have 3 levels of crews, and that gives you some different capabilities with the aircraft, how hard they can push them up as they're flying, things like that, what kind of cargo they can then take, and a few other things that are modeled with the crew. So it has a little bit of a role-playing aspect, as you can level up your crew as you fly the missions. Like your green crew here has flown 1 mission. I can toggle the mission count. If they flew another mission, they're at 2. If they fly 3 missions, then they get upgraded to an average crew, and now they get some more benefits by doing that.
Right. And then from average to a crack or whatever
veteran crew.
Yeah.
And then each of the aircraft are rated for different cargo capabilities. So as you can see here, this is, these planes have different cargo loaded on them already. And
that's the cubes, eh? The
cubes, the cubes. Yeah. So like the yellow are food cubes. So that aircraft's delivering food because he was trying to meet his goal of he needed 6, and he didn't make it when the game ended. So he was behind in that area. Right. So, and then you see these things. These are problems that the aircraft has developed either during takeoff or during flight. Something might have happened where these aircraft have problems. So now you have to worry about maintenance. When you land, you have to repair the planes, to keep them flying, and that kind of stuff. And then once you actually get your aircraft to Berlin, there's cargo that's going to be coming back from Berlin. So you have the white are passengers and the blue are products. So Berlin, their lifeblood was to manufacture products in Berlin and then sell them back to the West, so they can keep income coming in, since they were blockaded. And then the passengers represent, either refugees trying to get out of Berlin. A lot of the adults would ship out their children to relatives that were in West Germany. People that needed medical care, things like that, they would be shipping out. And the game has a asymmetric setup because the U.S. was more concerned about the cargo in and less about the cargo out. So a lot of times the U.S. planes would land, dump all the cargo, and their guys were like, hey, hop, skip, and jump, we're out of here. We're flying back to get another load, because that was what they were interested in. But, the RAF and the Commonwealth recognized the propaganda value and also the humanitarian aspect of getting the passengers flown out. So one of the things you track is the number of passengers you've flown out, which gives you some victory points during the game. So those are tracked over here on your squadron board. And if you look at the different aircraft, so this is a York. So looking at the counter, so the counter shows the aircraft. This is the squadron it belongs to, which is 30 Squadron. It is Flight 2B, so each squadron might have 3 flights of aircraft, normally from 2A or from A to D on that. So this is a way for you to track who is who on the aircraft. And then the 4 is their speed, which tells you how far they can move each turn if they're basically unloaded with cargo or less than full capacity. And the 2 here shows you what cubes they can carry. So in this case, the York can carry 2 of any type of cube. Where if you look over here at the Lancastrian tanker, flown by 77 Squadron, their 3B flight, he's a little bit slower with a speed of 3, but he can only carry fuel cargo.
Right.
So you have to make sure.
It has a black. The illustration is a black cube, just for those that are listening. I also
Right.
just while you're looking at this, I think everything you've described so far is easy to imagine. But the map board, it's not hexes, it's not exactly areas. It looks in a way to be a sort of a point-to-point type map board. Would that be the best way? Yeah.
Yeah, it's point to point. So if you look down in the bottom left here is we have Wiesbaden and Ramstein, and or I'm not sorry, not Ramstein, but Rhine-Main. These are 2 bases. So the numbers 7 and 8 are the bases. This is where the Americans would be flying from. So your aircraft would take off here. And again, one of the things that this isn't the final counter art. The actual counter art is going to have the aircraft flying both ways. So right now they're only flying, to the left, but you can flip the counter to show that you're
they're flying home. Yeah.
Yeah. So the actual counters
Outbound.
they'll have that. But when you fly your aircraft and if I didn't have a full load of 3 cubes, I could move 4 space. And then that's how you do your movement. If you're fully loaded, you can only move your speed -1. So you'd only be able to move 3 if your plane's fully loaded because it's heavier, less capability. So there's a lot of different nuances in the game as you're playing. Wow, I can really get those 3 cubes there, but I'm going to be slower doing it. Do I want to just load 2 and be faster to try to race somebody to be able to get my points going on that? And then one of the things you see here are these divert tracks, the red and white dash. That's if the Soviets interfere with your aircraft and you have to divert. So you might have to put
it's going to make your travel time. You're going to have to go farther to get to get home or to get in.
Right. Yeah. So if this aircraft had a divert because the Soviets sent up some airplanes to harass them, they would have to go on this route, come back to this, and then now they can go back on their route to Berlin. And then once you land at Berlin, there are 3 different bases to land at. And then here, showing the aircraft here are showing you're in different status. So these guys had landed. They're in the waiting status. These guys had maintenance problems. So they're in the maintenance. And then if it was your turn and you had an aircraft waiting, then you bring them over here. You're going to check to see what kind of cargo is available. Depending on what your crew skill is, that's going to determine if you have to roll or if you have a choice of what you want to take. So because the green crews, they might get something forced on them that they didn't want, where the veteran crew says, nope, I'm just taking these passengers out, and you have a choice to do that. And then again, you're gonna fly back.
Right, and just for anybody who's listening, that third spot in each of the bases is the ready spot. So
correct.
They're not incoming. They're not in maintenance. Once they're out of maintenance or they're finished the incoming, they get shifted over to ready, and then you can use them. I would guess for outbound. To go back to the outbound, that you just touched on it earlier though. About taking the blue cubes out of Berlin, meaning products. I had never it's not like I think about the actual Berlin airlift very often, but when I do, I never sort of thought about having to export products as a way to keep Berlin's fragile economy alive.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a huge component. And one of the huge components in the game is these 2 tracks you see up here, a Soviet Resolve track. So this starts off, and again, we started at the beginning of the game, so Soviet Resolve was fairly low. But if Soviet Resolve ever gets up to level 8, that basically means World War III has erupted. The airlift failed. The Soviets based on everything going on, the Soviets decided that they couldn't handle this anymore, and that it was enough to trigger World War III. So that's one of the tracks that the players have to juggle what happens on that. And the other one, which is one of the game that's an automatic game loss condition, is if Soviet resolve gets up to 8. The other one is Berlin morale, which again that's tied to taking out the products and the passengers to do that. If at the beginning of the game it starts at level 2, and if it gets down to 0 and the players do not take the actions to mitigate it, the game's over, because the Berlin morale falls. They basically align themselves with the Soviets. They tell the Western allies to beat feet and get out of there, and that's it. So that's
and that the Berlin morale starts low. It's at 2, and if it's to 0, you're screwed. But that track goes all the way up to 7. So presumably there's things you can do to increase the morale to give yourself some cushion.
Absolutely, there's a myriad of things you can do. So during the game, every time, there's this chit draw track over here. So it goes from 1 to 7. Normally a seasonal game turn will have basically 5 turns. So you start off here and you go through this entire draw cup. Once that's done, then you move to the next turn. But that's how you move your flight. So when I draw something out of here, so this would be the first flight. So flight 2 of 77 Squadron will be the first flight to move. So the player would come over to the board here and look for so 77 flight 2, that's one of the aircraft. So then you would look and see, well, all right, what do I have that guy loaded with? So 77 flight 2, all right, he has 2 cargo. His cargo capacity is 2, so he is reduced to a speed of 3. And the air bases are over here. So this shows you the different air bases.
Nice.
The one this guy was going to was 6. And here is when, you have aircraft on the ground ready to start flying a mission to Berlin. And these are the available cubes that they have at their base, cargo-wise, to take with them.
And each of those bases, they look like they have a different maximum amount of cubes that they could have on them at any one time.
It just happened the way it's going. The maximum is 10.
I understand those bases. I was thinking those were spaces, but those are actually fuel cubes. Those aren't spots to put things. Those are actually black cubes.
Yeah, exactly. Like this base is nothing but fuel right now.
That's right. Yeah. So that since it's a bit of a chit pull mechanism then, and to see which groups go when.
Yeah, exactly.
You look like it looks like you've got this game like really far along. When are we looking at being able to pre-order this, or
it's already hit its pre-order. It actually hit its pre-order mark for Legions well before the game was handed off to me. So I mean, I'm waiting on Randy Lean, who's the owner of Legion War Games. He's doing the graphic upgrades
to tell which way they're going.
Yeah, I wanted it to be more realistic, where the aircraft aren't flying backwards to Berlin. So
right. So the way you're describing it, when you flip it over, you can see it visually if the aircraft is inbound or outbound.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. The game ramps up as you go farther along, and when you play, you can, if you want to play a quick game, you can pick one season and just play that one season. Or you can do a full campaign, which is all 4 seasons, or you can do mix and match. You can play, any 2 seasons. You can play solo. If you play solo, you actually run 2 squadrons, and you're basically going against the game system. If you play multiplayer cooperative, you're competing against each other, but cooperatively with each other to beat the game system and not fail the Soviet Resolve or Berlin morale tracks.
Right. Well, so there's a small. It's probably not going to make it out by the end of the year, but it should be early next year if everything goes your way, I suppose. You do as much development work as you do design work, and you've shown me another game that it's a totally different game, but a kind of a similar topic in that it's what do you call it? The Knights over Stalingrad. So it's basically a game about trying to get supplies in the German trying to get supplies into surrounded Stalingrad.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a game, and I'm bringing it up.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so you have a map of the Stalingrad area. So this is set in November 1942 through December 1942. So it's a fairly limited amount of time, but there is just a lot you can do in this game. So if anybody's familiar with Aces of Valor, the combat in the game is very similar to that, but again, on a more evolved, I wouldn't say complicated, but there's just more that you can do versus what you can do in Aces of Valor, which I thought was a pretty good game for how it modeled some of the World War I aspects of combat, but there wasn't a lot of differentiation between the aircraft, where this game just so much more choices for the player for a solitaire game. Which,
for folks who are just listening, I should note that this map is completely different than the previous one. It's more like an area map in a way, or you could even think of it as a hex map, except it's squares instead. And as the German, you've got to get from whatever base you're at. You've got to survive the flight just to Stalingrad.
Yes.
Before you even have a chance of delivering whatever it is you're trying to deliver. There's a lot of chance to be intercepted along their way.
Yeah, and for the most part, though, your job in this game is you are for a fighter squadron, or Staffel in this case for the Germans. You have your basically squadron of pilots that you are flying these missions, and there are, let's see, there's 7 different campaigns that you can play in this, or actually 6, because the other ones are extra missions. But from the German side, there are 2 different squadrons that you could work from, or bases. So they're all JG3, but one of them is actually inside the cauldron that you're going to operate from. And then you can have a BF-110 heavy fighter squadron that you're running, Romanian fighter missions. Or you can play from the Soviet side. You can be an IL-2 squadron commander, or fighter missions from one of 3 bases. So during the game, you're going to draw, and I'll just pick Moravsky, the JG3. You're going to pick your mission, bring it over here, and this one is, depending on what are the date of the campaign, it tells you what you're going to do. So in this case, you're going to take 3 fighters, and you may take an extra fighter for -3 mission points. So, and then you're going to fly that mission from, you're going to be flying from here, and then there's different charts on what's going to happen for that. And then over here you have,
and your squadron is going to be like an escort squadron, or a fighter, like a sweep ahead of the actual cargo.
Yeah, so you are going to get X amount of fighters. So I'm going to draw some fighters here.
Are these random draws?
Yeah, they're random draws from there for their skill level. Yeah, so these are your aircraft, and they have your gunnery value, your dogfight value, dice that you're going to roll for the guy. So the 12-sided dice is the highest, so that's basically an ace pilot. You have the 10, which is a veteran pilot, and then this guy is going to be rolling a D8. So he is just a regular pilot. So these are your aircraft, and then those are the numbers that you need to score with the dice you're rolling, whether you get 1 hit or 2 hits. And then there's charts for the different things that are going to come up, like to generate what your enemies are, and there is a whole slew of different enemies that you can run into. So I'll just pull a few up here. So you have the yaks.
That's totally dependent on which of the missions you're flying as well.
Right. Yeah. So whoever you're going to run into. They have all these event cards that can come into play. So I'll just pull one up here. All right. So this one is mission aircraft sight an ongoing air-to-air battle. So you elect to join or avoid. So this is you see some other friendly aircraft that are fighting in a dogfight. Do you want to deviate from your mission and go over and join into that fight?
And the advantage of going to join would be you might score some extra victory points at the risk of damage to yourself.
Yeah.
I'd forgot. It's been a while since I played some of your playtest with this, but I totally remember how excited you get when you get a couple of those aces with the 12s compared to the guys that can only roll the 8s. It's just like, those aces are just so valuable.
Yeah, in the combat, again, if you're familiar with Aces of Valor, you are rolling to see where, basically on the order is who gets to attack whom. As you're going, the higher the number is, the better position you are. It's
really great, because if you have planes that are higher up, or if you've got some planes that are higher up and then some that are lower, there's a good chance that your higher up planes may take out the enemy before that enemy gets a chance to prey on your lower planes in terms of initiative order.
Yeah, especially if you are escorting, like you were mentioning escort. So, if you had, and you could see there's just so many, he's added so many different types of aircraft in there. You have Ju-52s, Heinkel 111s, Ju-86s, Romanian JRS 79s, Ju-88s. There's recon aircraft, ground strike, Heinkel 129s and 123s. There's the different named aces that I mentioned, the Italians. The BF-110s, the Ju-87 Stukas. So you have all of those, so if I had a Stuka in here, this guy might be down here somewhere where I'm trying to protect him against Russian aircraft. So
for people on the podcast, I got to tell you I know this is just preliminary art, but these counters look great. I love top-down counters with have a look at the actual outlines of the planes and in color.
Yeah, the artist that did these aircraft, Ian Wedge, he's a Brit, and he's been my artist on all the games that I've designed, Elusive Victory, Bloody April. So he also did the artwork on this.
They're just great. They look really good.
Yeah, no, he's definitely amazing artist on that. Skills I do not have.
And I like all the, like you were mentioning, all the different aircraft. I've got a soft spot for those BF-110s, two-seaters.
Yes,
they can take a beat, or they're not the most agile thing, but they can dish it out.
Yeah, on the Russian front, they were pretty effective. So
we should mention what's the designers? You're the developer on this. Who's the designer on this one?
Yeah, Dan Monette. He's a former Navy officer. So like me, he's former military officer. So yeah, it was great working with him. We had some good collaboration on this. Again, bringing my Air Force background into it. He's a Navy P3 guy is his background. So the ASW type aircraft.
Tell us what, for those of us who didn't spend our time in the military, whenever you guys say like P3, E5, or, what's a P3?
P3 Orion aircraft. It's a Navy maritime aircraft. They use that
great
patrol for submarines, and they do a lot of other stuff. They upgraded it to a lot of electronic warfare and some spooky stuff that they can do as well. Cool.
Well, this I'm as I told you before I gave it a go. I'm not much of I don't play a ton of solitaire. I'm like you. I like to play face to face. But I found this really fun, and I did not find that the missions kept feeling like it was the same thing over and over, even if it was like 4 of my planes running into 5 of the bots' planes. The way they get distributed on the sort of the initiative track, the combat track, and the difference in who rolls a D12 and who rolls a D8, it just made it feel different every time.
I find the game amazing in the amount of variety that you can probably play this game for a very long time, and if you're doing all the different campaigns on it, you're going to have something different every time you play.
And there's also random events that can come in here too, right?
Yes, I had pulled up the random events. There's a whole slew of event cards that can come into play. Here, this one, mission aircraft are surprised by a flight of enemy aircraft.
Yeah, so, that's not good. That's a bad card.
Yeah. And there's also, you also have all these cards that you can use in the actual dogfights.
Right, cards that you hang on to and then use them as needed.
Yes. Yeah, you can use them during the game.
Some missions some events happen right away, and other ones it's like use this special thing if the opportunity comes up.
Yeah, so the dogfight, I'll pull up one. They have low yo-yo. So this is avoid attack. So if the initiative differential is 2 or less, you can use this to avoid an attack. So if an enemy aircraft was above you in the list, so they're going to go before you by a position of 2 or less, you can play this card to potentially avoid an attack.
Yeah, which makes a huge difference, because if you don't avoid it, you may not be around with that plane to get the attack.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a lot of the layers that this game adds, which I mentioned. The Aces of Valor game is a good game, but I think this game takes a lot of that concepts for that game and takes it to another level. To me, this is one of the best solitaire games I've played, with the amount of decision making and the other things that you do besides it just being on a procedural rail that a lot of solo games take you on.
Well, and it's interesting too when you were talking about Berlin Airlift and how the focus of that game is really about the cargo in and out, and the combat is more like just a harassment sort of thing.
Right.
With this, the combat is happening all the time, and it totally is a combat game. You're still trying to fulfill the missions, but there's going to be lead flying every mission.
Yeah, you're definitely going to be sweating every one of your missions to keep your guys alive and survive. And one of the cool things he has is, based on how you do in your campaign, we have these campaign debrief booklets, which look like declassified reports that you would pull out of the archive, like you actually went back and I'm looking at here's the after action reports from the squadron commander of that, and it'll give you a debrief on how you did in the mission.
How you did. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Which I thought is a pretty cool function. So, yeah, you've got a bunch of those little booklets that, depending on how you do on the mission, whether you were successful, marginally successful, you failed. It's going to give you a report and basically tell you what happened to your player character as the commander.
Right. And this one, like you said, we're just waiting for it to get its pre-order numbers, but it's ready to go.
Yeah, it's ready. It's ready to go to the printers, and as soon as it hits its pre-order mark. So, if somebody's interested in World War II, solitaire, air gaming, Eastern Front, having a lot of decision making, something that definitely would keep you interested. And there's also some rules in the game to be able to play a 2-player as well.
Sweet, excellent. So a little bit for everybody.
Yeah, because once you get to the combat phase, that you can now, everybody's playing cards and deciding how you want to attack based on that versus the game AI.
Right. Well, before we finish up, you've got a few other things that are either in development or finished development and ready to go. We should just make a mention of a few of those and talk about those as well.
Yeah. Do you want to see Zeppelins?
Yeah, this is Zeppelins of the Purple Twilight. That's a great title. So this must be another World War I game.
Yes. Yeah, this covers the Zeppelin raids on the United Kingdom during World War I. So one of the things is the Zeppelin War is very interesting. I didn't know a lot about it until I got involved in this project. So Alan Sherwood is an Australian. This is the guy's magnum opus. He's been designing this game for probably 12, 15 years. He's an engineer. He works on the E-7 Wedgetail aircraft in Australia, which is a command and control aircraft similar to the U.S. AWACS.
What's the scale here? How much that? Like, looks like London takes up maybe like 7 or 8 hexes. What's the hex scale here?
I do not remember what the scale is for each hex, but it's basically
this has got to be
it goes all the way up to Scotland. So
it's got to be like only 10 miles a hex or something here. This is
it's fairly it's very, very zoomed in. So one of the things about flying a Zeppelin is you never know where you're going and you never know where you're going to go.
Right, you're at the mercy of the winds.
Yeah, and plus the navigation is, even though you can see on the map where you are, there are some certain things in the game mechanics that will force you, like just an example here, if I was trying to go, let's say I wanted to bomb Bedford over here to the left, and that was my target. Well, depending on how good your navigation has been, and if you're not following navigational aids like rivers or noticing as you cross, especially crossing the coastline, it's easier to attack stuff that as you cross the coastline where you know where things are. But as you get into the interior of England, I might think I'm bombing, Luton down here, but I ended up going to Bedford, based on my navigation. And as you go, you might end up being drifted off in a different direction depending on your navigation status. So it can be a bit frustrating as you're flying these Zeppelins on being able to hit your target, because you might not be on the right track, or you failed to navigate properly, because one, it could be that there were clouds below you, then you lost your bearings. And then also you have the anti-aircraft searchlights The British, they have all their different 18 different types of British aircraft that can be used to intercept you.
And this is solo, or is the British actually a player?
You can play it solo as the Germans, or you can play it 2 players with a British and a German player. Or you can also play multiplayer.
And what was the designer's name on this again?
Alan Sherwood.
Alan Sherwood. Good. I'd like to get that out there. Yeah. And who's doing the art?
The art. So the art on the Zeppelins and the aircraft were done by Steve Pancrazio, who is a guy that does self-published air combat games. So
right.
He does the Warbirds series, which is a lot of fun. It's the Warbirds series is different from Fighting Wings, which is just World War II. His Warbirds series, he has a World War I module, a World War II module, and a jet, basically from Korean War up to modern time. And it all uses basically the same rule set, but different scales for the different eras. And really good game system. I normally have a game or two going on with him and whoever's wanting to play on that. So,
well, there's 2 other ones I want to ask you about before we wrap up. Though you have an Air War Korea game. You're developing that as well.
Yeah, that one I don't have the Vassal up on that one. That was just that's a new one that Legion War Games just signed on to. I had done a playtest demo with the designer, a French designer. So that's a modern day, F-16s, F-35s, F-15s versus North Korea solitaire game where you're going to be flying missions and doing that in the Korean theater.
Right. So it's when we say Air War Korea, we're talking about Korea today, not the Korean War.
Yeah, not the MiG Alley Sabres and MiG-15s.
And then the other one is Waning Crescent Shattered Cross. And
Andy Lokes is the designer on this one. This one kind of got stuck, I think, for a few years. We're just getting up to speed on what needed to be updated on this one, but it covers the 1565. So this is the Siege of Malta in 1565, where the Ottomans launched this huge invasion fleet of troops to go after the basically 300 knights of I'm sorry, I can't remember offhand.
No, that's all right.
Who these guys are, but
we're talking basically.
But they were basically the Crusader Knights.
Yeah, it's like late medieval period in the Eastern Middle East. We're talking, I guess, all the way over to Turkey here, maybe.
Yeah, so it's the Ottoman Turks that are coming after them, and they sent a huge amount of troops, and basically they have these 3 forts. So they have Fort St. Elmo, so they're defending this fort. The Castle San Angelo, Berga and Senglia are the 2 fortified towns that they're defending, and it's a 2-player game. So one player is the Ottomans, and the other person is playing the Christian player, and you're trying to survive the siege.
Well, this is the first game that's not an air game. There's not a lot of air stuff happening in 50 minutes.
No. But Malta's. I had at one time I was looking to design a game on Malta, depending on how the Cactus Air Force went. I was thinking Malta would have been a nice one too to cover, the Italians and Germans bombing Malta against the British defenders there.
Yeah, I think it's time's not over. That can still be on the wish list.
Yeah, for sure. So if Cactus Air Force ever gets done, Malta was one I was definitely looking at. But this game we're gonna start play testing here in a bit to cover that. So, but yeah, this is the one that we're gonna be working on here in the near future.
Well, it's been great talking to you, Terry. This is I had no idea about a couple of these games. It was great to see. And now I didn't think I'd ever be interested in a Zeppelins game, but now I sort of feel like a whole lot more to the whole Zeppelin thing than I thought. So
yeah,
that's totally interesting in and of itself.
Yeah, it's fairly in-depth rule book. I mean, we spent a lot of time working on the rule book for it because it is not a short rule book. So it is very detailed, but procedurally wise, once you're playing the game and flying a Zeppelin, I personally find the British side harder because there's so many different ways you can set up versus the Zeppelin player is like, well, I'm going to try to bomb London, and that's where I'm going to try to navigate to.
I think that's about. Unless you had any other games you wanted to talk about, I think that wraps it up pretty well.
The only thing I wanted to mention, because I do a lot of play testing too. So I did play testing on Burden of Command. I don't know if you've seen that. That's a game on Steam. Really, really neat game.
Oh yeah.
I'm doing some testing on Space Empires, the GMT game.
Oh, great.
They're doing a computer version of that. That one's got a long way to go on that. But there's a guy named Mark on Discord who has taken the entire Fleet series of games and has turned them into a computer version. And I know I posted it on your...
I heard about that, yeah.
I posted on your page, but I tell you what, this guy has done a fabulous job with the Fleet series games, and he just keeps adding on to. I mean, I think he's got every 6th Fleet, all 2nd Fleet, all the different ones in there. You can play it multiplayer against somebody else, or you could just play against the AI, and the AI is pretty good.
I didn't realize he had an AI. I thought it was just like a digital implementation without an AI.
No,
AI is amazing.
It's got a full AI. I mean, I've played through probably about 15, 20 scenarios on it, and it's a whole lot of fun. And then the way he has the multiplayer, you just sync up. So if you and I were playing, I don't even have to send you a file. You just log into the game, and the game's it goes to the cloud, and then it brings it back in and says, "Hey, your opponent has done a move," and you can do it. Playing the multiplayer is kind of slow in the fact that there's so many sequences that it kind of stops and sends stuff.
Right,
versus,
back and forth. Yeah,
playing the AI, you can get through a game in 45 minutes to an hour. So
I totally look forward to checking it out because I only have the 2nd Fleet is the only one I have, and I've always felt like I should try and collect these because these are kind of cool games. But now I can check them all out and see which ones I'm really interested in.
Well, and then it's got a scenario. You can build your own scenarios in there, so. It's amazing work for freeware. So I'm trying to talk the guy into doing a conversion of my Bloody April game into a computer format, because I think that's one of the aspects of a board game with the fog of war for something like the World War I air combat would be a huge boon for being able to play it like that. So fingers crossed that he's going to be able to do it. So I told him I'd give him a shout out here on the podcast. So don't cut that portion out.
No. And if you have a site that people can go to check it out, I'll get that from you, and we'll put it in the show notes so that people can know where to go to try and find his stuff.
Yeah, it's Discord. It's MB Fleet Series. If you just do a search on Discord for the server MB Fleet server series.
Well, thanks for being my guest today. It was great to talk to you, and After we wrap up, I'll talk to you offline, and so we'll try and finish up our Death in the Trenches game as well. We're at a critical turning point where all of a sudden your damn Germans are giving us try to punch through on the west.
I tried to punch through. I didn't get as many sixes as I wanted on that attack. I was way below the overkill threshold.
All right, I'll say goodbye to you now, and thanks to everybody for listening, and I'll talk to you offline.
All right, see ya.
As you heard in our conversation, we were looking at a couple of game map boards. I'm working on a video version of this conversation. Look for it on my YouTube channel if you're interested, though I think we describe things fairly well. Parting shots. Well, it's good to be back behind the mic. Missing a month really rubbed me the wrong way. Here's hoping it's smooth sailing from here on. Next time, I'll have an interview with Jose Neva from Neva Wargames for you. They're a fledgling publisher out of Spain who are looking to carve a niche for themselves by packaging their games in smaller boxes. Great for those of us running out of shelf space. Okay, thanks as always to all the Pushing Cardboard supporters, whether it's by becoming a Ko-Fi patron or buying swag. If you want to become a supporter, there's links on the website or the newsletter. Also in the newsletter and the website are my affiliate links for both Cube for Me and Noble Knight Games, if you wonder what the hell I'm talking about. And if you'd like to receive the newsletter and you don't already, you can sign up at the website. There's one newsletter just for the podcast, which contains links to some of the things discussed in each episode, and another if you want to be notified of any special events. That one gets used much less often, but I recommend it. And then there's one that's just used to remind you of my live stream every 2 weeks. Check that out if you can. There's info on the website and the YouTube channel. Or track me down on Discord or by email. I'll get you sorted out. Until then, happy change of the seasons, and try to avoid any pumpkin-spiced war games. See you next time.